Mahesh sir, how would you want to introduce IB to students who are not very familiar with it?
So first of all, I would like to say that if you are looking at a good board, and I say think that all boards are very good. Okay, I don't say that any particular board is good or bad. But if you are looking at a progressive board, if you are looking at student-centric learning on which NEP is based upon, then I think IB is a good choice. And you have the best practices from around the world being implemented in IB schools. One thing I would like to break the myth is that don't look at it as a board only to go overseas. Look at it for your personal fitment with IB education. So what are the tenets of IB education, so to say? Inquiry-led learning. We are talking about student-centric learning. We have learner profile attributes. Okay. And academics is at the center as well. People think that international schools or international boards are not rigorous. Not true. And can students pursue engineering or medicine with an IB qualification? Yes, very much so. These are some of the tenets I wanted to clarify upfront, that 50% of our students who do the IBDP in India continue to study higher education in India itself. It's not like 90% or 80%, 50% of them continue to pursue their higher education in India. They go to universities like DU, University of Mumbai, both the public and the private universities. Even in small towns like Bhopal, say Barkutullah University, IB students find their way there. And of course, they go to the best of universities in India and overseas. Thank you.
Mahesh, just wanted to pick your brains on this. What is the typical profile of a student or who makes a choice of joining and taking up an IB board as compared to any other board?
Yes. So the profile of a student who goes into an IB school is very varied. There are, of course, students at, say, an MYP or a DP level who are looking obviously at a overseas education. I will not deny that. Of course, it is there. But then there are students who have been shifting between boards or have been shifting between cities. That's also a good fitment as far as what I've observed. And there are students who understand through their parents or having lived overseas or what is happening in nearby schools that an IB education is different. It is research oriented. It helps you to solve problems. It prepares you to do community service. It helps you to develop as a person, as a problem solver, as a critical thinker. It leads to your cognitive development. All these make for a good choice. So a student who is willing to put in the rigor, academic rigor, as well as building one's own personality, then that would be a very good choice in terms of the middle years and higher years, secondary. Early years and primary, if you're looking at enjoying your education, if you're looking at happiness in going to school, enjoying your studies and learning how to learn, moving away from rote learning, then an IB primary education also makes for a very good choice.
First of all, can you introduce to the students what exactly a CBSE board is and the kind of a profile of a student who makes the choice of going through the CBSE board as compared to state boards or IB or ICS?
So I agree completely with the other Mahesh that it's really a matter of choice. There is no good board. There is no bad board. There's no good school. There's no bad school. I think all schools are good. Any organization that's seeking children to give an education has to be good. A bad school won't survive, much like a bad restaurant or a bad hospital. How would I introduce CBSE? It's the largest board. It's the largest national board in terms of numbers. It's a board that has come into being many years ago, and contrary to belief that it has not changed, that it has remained archaic, is not very true, because the last decade has seen a lot of changes coming in. And I must admit, as a practitioner, a lot of those changes have been necessitated because of the kind of excellent work done by the IB board, to be honest. A lot of ideas have been taken from the IB, from the GCSE, from the ICSE, because eventually, every school, every board wants to reach out to the children and provide a good education. It's a misconception that CBSE equal to rote learning. I don't agree with that. I am a student of CBSE. If it was rote learning, I wouldn't have cleared class 12. I'm very bad at mugging up stuff. I just can't. It has to make sense to me. Otherwise, I can't. I don't know what to say about it. And having been a teacher for 37 years now, I have never promoted rote learning. And I have a pretty large experience of meeting with principals. I think all of us know that rote learning is not the way forward. It is not possible for a child to be ready, future ready, so to say, if they are only going to mug up and spew out whatever they have learned up. So for me, the CBSE board made sense because it is, at the risk of sounding maybe in uneducated, like, it is a board for the masses. It caters to the needs of every child. So whether the child is in a small kasbah, in a village, in a small town, in a big city, there is something for all of them. So for me, that is CBSE, and it is almost like a way of life for me. Having been a student, having been a teacher, now becoming a principal for the past 2 decades, and handling CBSE and being part of CBSE. Actually, I'm part of the ideating cell. I work with them very closely. So I see a lot of changes coming in as well as we go along.
But Aditi ma'am, do you think, and this has been a perception, and I would rather want to be corrected on that, is there a hierarchy amongst the boards in terms of first the state board, then the CBSE, then the IB, and in a certain sense, because I also see data when I look at the national examination, which is a JEE or a NEET or a CAT or now QAT, there seems to be some kind of a bias towards students who are studying CBSE cracking that examination better. And that is data now I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know that data exists because I think I heard you talking unofficially. The two Maheshes were chatting when I joined.
Yes.
That the data is more skewed towards CBSE simply because the curriculum is that the paper setters of JEE and NEET see the CBSE and the NCERT books more. It's as simple as that. It's just an alignment of the curriculum. And Mahesh is very correct that there are quite a few children from the ICSE and from IB who crack IIT and NEET. But if you ask them, they will tell you that they were studying the NCERT books as well, along with doing whatever they were doing as part of their boards. It's not a battle. It's an open ground. I mean, what we all boards need to do is come together, share good practices, and allow children to, without being judged, take on what suits them. I mean, it's not that I've heard so many people say, oh, CBSE is very difficult. I think they should go to IB. It's easy. IB is not easy. IB is child-friendly, yes. But it forces you to think independently. You're given, I mean, having now becoming part of IB, thanks to DPS International, I know it's not an easy curriculum. It's child-friendly, yes. But how many children are ready to take on that is what I think everybody has to see. And you can see by the sheer numbers, the numbers in IB are increasing. Definitely. It is appearing to be a more attractive board in terms of children enjoying. But I mean, I don't know what to do with this data. It absolutely perplexes me because certainly it could be about the pocket as well. It could be about reach. Not every city has an IB school. Not every parent can afford an IB education.
So to continue that thread, you said about the Kasbah, and I love that word. And just to share with you, the spread of IB is increasing. Today we have state schools which are offering the IB. We have schools, IB schools emerging from Kashmir all the way from the valley itself to places like Udhampur, to villages in Punjab, to Tiruchengood in Tamil Nadu. We now have IB schools and hopefully more. And in terms of the subject mapping, what I see is that, yes, the nomenclature sometimes becomes an issue because we call something like business management would become a business studies one, or we have mathematics analysis and interpretation and so on and so forth. So that sometimes creates confusion for sure. But if you look at it, the maximum variation in terms of the subject content would be about 15% is what I've gone through the mapping myself, is what I would say. How it happens is, especially when I'm talking about the DP, the IB DP, right? It's a rigorous program. Students have to do their extended essay. Mind you, 6 subjects they have to do, right? And they learn to become self-independent. Self-independent students who do research, a lot of activities that may not give them time to prepare in many cases. I'm not saying in all cases, in some cases, to prepare for the competitive exams, so to say. Because if you look at it, the same students do very well when it comes to, say, a SAT, which is also a competitive exam. Okay. So students, if they, what I've seen is that you cannot mark your attendance in the IB and go and do a quota study, or spend your time mostly at the coaching center. Then you are not doing justice to your school study. And
are you
IB
saying
is
that it
about-
happens somewhere else, sir? I'm sorry. That's a very important question for me. So are you saying that it happens in some other boards?
It does happen. We have seen that. And that question always comes to us.
Yeah.
Does it happen in all schools, all students? Definitely not.
So it's nothing to do with the school. I think I'm just looking at the board part of it. Schools
Yes.
can, but in IB, are you saying that it is protected enough to ensure that a student studying IB board cannot do both the two?
See, because it's the way the program is structured. You have internal assessments, you have extended essay, you have tasks, you have area of knowledge, so much of work. Okay, it's a 2-year timetabled syllabus or a curriculum, right? So students are kept engaged all the time. They have a lot of activities on their plate.
Okay. So, Mahesh, 2 questions that come to me from some of the conversation that you said earlier. You use 2 words. You use the word rigor, and you also use the word rote learning, right? And you somewhere
Which
also
Aditi
use the
was kind enough to disagree with.
absolutely, and I actually am with
Yeah.
Aditi on this matter. It's how you teach is what matters. That this rote learning is all about how teachers go about teaching the student. That's my belief. So the rigor, rote learning, and you also said application based. These are 3 words that you use. Can both of you touch base on these 3, because that's what is, I think, is the core at everything that we talk of in terms of teaching and everything. Mahesh, over to you first, please.
Should I go first, or Aditi?
Yeah, please. You please.
Whatever.
Aditi, ma'am, you go first. We're talking
Okay.
of rote learning,
So-
rigor, and application based.
So actually, Mahesh, I'm wondering whether you were a teacher at some point of time, because you use the right word. The teacher decides how a student learns, and the student decides how he or she is going to learn. There is no doubt about that. But to simply paint CBSE as a board of rote learning is really unfair.
Yeah.
The one, I mean, like what is happening in the CBSE is now we have project-based learning. So children pick up a project, and through that one project, they could be learning aspects of English or German or mathematics or physics. So many things are happening now. We also have the introduction 3 years ago of something called art integrated learning as part of NEP. Schools like mine have been following it for a long, long time. So you have, any subject being taught not through the book, but through an art form. It could be music, or through dance, through theater. I have had children in my school learning the periodic table through a rap song, and nobody learned anything. It was just fun, and they all added to it. It was nice. One of my favorite examples is the Jal Tarang, which the children took katoris. So they first had to find katoris of the right size and the right weight. So they learned aspects of physics and measurement and maths, and how much water to fill in each to bring out a different sound. So again, physics and resonance coming in. And then from that, what kind of music is made. So I don't think the child who's learned sound and weights and measures in this way is ever going to say that I learned it by rote. They learned it by experiencing something, by doing something with their hands. So this connect between the head, the heart, and the hand, which is now very tenuously being made, is something which we are all looking forward to, and we're looking forward to sort of an upheaval, because CBSE is, unfortunate, bad word, has a lot of students. There are many schools in very far off places where we have not been able to have the kind of outreach we want. CBSE works round the clock. I know it because I work with them trying to train teachers. So if you have a teacher who's entered the training session, switches off her camera and goes to cook, there's nothing we can do about it. So the will to learn is of the child, and the will to learn is also of the teacher. Because teachers also have to now unlearn a lot. If they're going to teach something new in a new way, it has to be unlearned, and then they have to relearn how teaching has to be done. So this is something which I think all of us are grappling with. But there are things which are happening within the CBSE, like I said, the project-based learning, experiential learning, art integrated learning, which is bringing in a lot of joy, which so far, frankly, I'm admitting it, was happening in the other boards, because somewhere maybe the content was a little child friendly. Maybe nobody had seen CBSE curriculum till maybe a decade ago. But since a decade ago, we definitely find changes coming in and a lot of joy inside the classroom. The whole thing about joyful learning has now become a buzzword and a reality.
No, I think Aditi ma'am, to begin with, scale is good. So I would always be proud of the scale that CBSE has. So there is no
absolutely,
because what it does is it allows us to learn from the student experiences and change the curriculum, because we have more number of students and to that extent more number of experiences coming back to us as feedback. Right?
Absolutely.
So I'm absolutely clear about this part of it, and that's where I also come to the state board, because that actually grooms in certain kinds of people. I'll now come to the brass tack for the kind of question.
Since Aditi answered, do you want me to take that?
Yeah,
please.
I will come. Yeah, Mahesh, yeah, please.
So those who are unfamiliar with the IBDP and the MYP, just to leave a couple of things, MYP is a 10th board qualification. It is a program from 6 to 10. It's probably the world's only on-screen 10th board examination. It's not an online, but an on-screen examination. And it has design as a subject, integrated sciences or individual sciences, and so on and so forth. It comes to the DP, which is 11th and 12th qualification. We have, in fact, two 11th and 12th qualifications. One is the IBDP and one is the IBCP, which is the careers program. When it comes to the IBDP, there are 6 subject groups. Ideally, a student should do one subject from each subject. So there's a lot of breadth and depth in it. And students would take, say, one English literature, one Hindi, or one Spanish. Okay, a student could be taking the sciences, which could be physics, chemistry. Mathematics is compulsory. They would go on to do, say, something like an art. So 6 subjects are there which a student would need to do to complete the IBDP. But that is not all. A student would have to take extended essay, a 4,000 word original piece of work, a 1,600 word theory of knowledge, and has to put in the hours for the creativity, action, and service to complete the whole IB diploma. There's a lot of work in it. It's a 2-year delivery, right? And most of it is research-oriented, applied learning, and all is taught usually in an interdisciplinary manner. They're not taught in a silo. So the students learn to apply context to what they are learning. That becomes very critical. And of course, there are rubrics and so on and so forth. I also want to share how IB keeps changing is we have a curriculum review and every subject changes. There is nothing static about it. So every 7 years, there's a mandatory curriculum review.
Okay. Can we, in a broader sense, ma'am and Mahesh, agree that an IB has a bias towards students who are looking at studying abroad, and CBSE has a bias towards taking the central examinations? Is that, I'm not saying that is what the intention is. I'm not saying that's what the objective is, but is there a bias towards that?
I think in general, yes. Having said that, there are, I think, an equal number, if not more, of children from CBSE in terms of quantum. Because like you said, the scale is huge. A large number of students from CBSE
but proportionately, it is not the case.
Prefer to go abroad.
But as a proportion, it's not necessarily the case, isn't it?
Yeah, so they have that option open.
Absolutely.
You know, what now? I know that good colleges like LSR and Stephens and Hindu take in IB students on the basis of the predicted scores. We need that to happen more universally, because you cannot change the pattern. You can't have IB now suddenly change your exam pattern and do it in alignment with CBSE. But there should be some system by which those students also join, more with the same ease that an ICSE or a CBSE student does.
And Mahesh, can I make an observation to answer both your questions? I think you're right. Both of you put it very nicely. And you would use the word bias. I think in India, I'm talking only from an Indian perspective. Because most of it is perception, right? The actual figures and facts might be different. The perception is that IB in India leans more towards the liberal arts and humanities.
Absolutely.
While CBSE is seen more science-centric, STEM. Okay, when it still comes to the sciences and STEAM, probably IB. While if you look at the the spread globally, then it is good STEM, good STEAM, and liberal arts when it comes to the IB.
There is also another misconception. It is presumed that you have to be really rich to do IB.
Correct.
It's a presumption, you know. I think somewhere the fee is a little bit higher because of the numbers. You know, you have to restrict your numbers to a certain number, and in a state board or in a national board, you can exceed the number. So I guess the economics does get a little bit skewed, but it's a misconception that only the super rich can take an IB and not somebody who can budget his expenses in such a way that he can still go in for an IB.
Ma'am, I'll come back to that question because that also bothers me a lot about IB of social equity, because my belief is that, ma'am, in a schooling system, you need to have all kinds of students so that your child learns not just what is taught, but what is around him or her in terms of the social equity, the kind of people that you are. And if you can't create ghettos, at least at a school level, you know, anyway, once you keep going up, the ghettos are created organically. And that for me is extremely important. When the right to education happened, when EWS students started coming in, I was extremely happy for one simple reason. I want my child to learn everything about the society.
Yeah.
And that's important. So I'll come to that later, ma'am.
I actually want to join my son in IBCP. So I wanted to know about its benefits. And like, you know, do they need to give any exams, and like where to join in India?
Mahesh, I think that's very important. There are 4 stages in IB's curriculum is what I understand. So can you just elaborate on those 4 the stages and how it pans out?
So IB has got a wonderful early years PYP program. It's called the primary years program for ages 3 and upwards. The primary years program from class 1 to class 5 with the Indian system, so to say. Middle years from 6 to 10. 11th and 12th, we have got 2 wonderful programs. One is the IBDP or the diploma program, which is very well known. And we have a program called the IB Careers program. It's in a way white collar professional career courses. Okay. Like say artificial intelligence. It's a 2 years deep dive into artificial intelligence, or sports management, or filmmaking, or psychology, so on and so forth. Data science, robotics. So there are schools, and there are now about say 60 odd schools which are in the various stages of authorization process, and you will see more and more schools taking on the IBCP. Look for a school nearby. I'm happy to say both Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, you'll have quite a few IBCP schools. Bangalore, of course, Bombay, Gurgaon, Delhi also, you see a lot of IBCP schools. These are good courses, and you have got good pathways coming in. Mahesh, you would know that new age universities are cropping up even in India, like say Plaksha, Kreya, Ashoka, and so on and so forth. They are looking students very differently. These students, when they go on as a 21st century learner, they are ready for the world challenges. And the world has become volatile, and whatever we say, right? The skills of the future are what we need to teach them. The jobs of the future might change. That keeps them on.
Yeah. Aditi ma'am, I just want an extension of what Lakshmi ji was talking just now. And I don't want a philosophical answer. I want a very objective answer in this one, please, which is that if someone is looking at cracking the competitive examination landscape in India, do you suggest or advise the parent to go through the CBSE module?
You're pushing me against the wall, Mahesh. That's not fair.
Yeah, but that's what a parent is.
I don't have to tell the parent that. Parent comes, you know, much like a patient goes to a doctor after having read Google properly. So they often suggest to the doctor that this is probably what's happening to me. Parent comes to me pre-armed with this.
Yeah,
this is the conception.
Philosophical. Yeah.
Like, maybe I am a philosopher.
Fair enough.
But I'm just telling you, when a parent comes to me saying this, that my child is hell-bent on being a doctor and the IB will not help him be a doctor, will you take him in?
Okay.
Then the next problem comes. Let me come to the problem. You want a frank answer? I'll tell you.
Yeah, please.
8 out of 10 children don't clear the CBSE entrance exam to good schools. It's as simple as that. And it's not fair, because when your child has, till a certain age, children are aware of what they are taught. To be honest, whether they self-learn it or they construct that knowledge or they are taught it, they will know what is happening inside the school. And if there are 2 boards which are diametrically different in the content that they teach, and I want to test a child basis of CBSE, I'm doing something unfair. I'm conscious of that. But I need to have a ground on which we are now going to prepare them for the IITs or the JEEs or the NEETs. So then I tell the parents they have to clear the exam. And honestly, only 2 of them clear. And when you ask them, it sounds horrible when I say it, and I'm saying it, but they have been doing a parallel study of the NCERT books.
So a state board student is
can I
twice
supplement
only, right?
that? Can I supplement what Aditi said?
Of course.
Yeah.
What Aditi said is very pertinent, because it's about your school, your schooling experience. If whatever was taught in the school would have been good enough, then the Akash and Baijus of the world would not have emerged. That's my personal opinion.
Absolutely. I'll clap for that one.
Thank you.
Okay. The next thing is, ma'am, the way the assessment happens in a CBSE board. Can you throw some light or insights of how it all pans out, because you're dealing with 99%, 100 percentiles, percent, and those kind of things. So can you just talk of the kind of assessment that happens in a CBSE board as against any other board?
Okay, so having been a evaluator for many years also in the past, and because again it's a question of scale. You have so many schools, so many kinds of schools and teachers. You get a very clearly laid out answering scheme when you get to assess. And in that answering scheme, you may find that the question was something and the child is answering something quite different. So teachers, let me start looking for sense. Somewhere can I give a mark? And if I find the key word hanging around somewhere, or some concept which is buried under a lot of jargon, I will pick it out and I'll give the mark. So sometime I recognize it myself that if I was a student, in my time, you got a 60%, your parents were ecstatic. Today, if you get a 60%, you don't know where to go. Times have changed. Yeah. So it's all about that. And I don't know when it happened. I wish I could, if I had time to again remap my journey of 37 years and see when did it happen that a child got 100 in English. It's not possible to get 100 in English. They're getting it because somewhere in the marking scheme, their answers are aligning to the right answer. That's
So are you saying, ma'am, and this is something that a parent has written to me, and I'm trying to rephrase that question. The teacher is telling the student to ensure that whatever the student knows can be kept aside, but they need to have those 7-8 keywords in an answer to score the marks.
No. That's not fair. That's a very unfair statement. But yes, there are children who struggle in class, who don't know how to form an answer well. They may have problems. They could be not paying attention. So those children are definitely told that, okay, don't go into the metaphysics of things. Just know that this is how you have to answer. Just remember this bit.
Okay.
So they just sail through. It's not to get that 100 or to get that 99, which I still can't get my head around, unfortunately.
No, that is always the case, ma'am. Like I'm a 60 percentile in school and I'm a topper at the All India level. And both don't correlate in a sense. When an All India examination happened, I'm a topper. But in the school, I'm a 60 percentiler. So, that was 90s, mind you. Today is a different scale altogether. And that is where I think all these, like at an NTA level, at a CBSE level also, the normalization has become the biggest challenge between state boards and CBSE and IB. The biggest challenge for them is how do you normalize these scores and make some sense out of the nonsense that happens around. Yeah. Mahesh, anything that you want to add here?
In our case, assessments are continuous assessments. There are internal assessments when it comes to 11th and 12th, which are very critical. And then you have the formal board exams.
Okay.
I just wanted to share with you that our patterns for the board exam are very different. They are rubric-based, very contextual. And like she said, picking up the words and the context is very critical. One second is, we don't have a concept that English A and English B would happen. Then you move to the sciences, physics A, physics B, or like that. It will be English 1 in the morning, you could have physics 2 or a chemistry 3. Okay, and then the next day you will have that. So this is something which is very common. We also don't have something like a long holiday before your exam preparation. Schools continue till the very end, and you will have 1 or 2 weeks max to take a board exam.
Now, this segment is about the choices that the students have or options students have, Mahesh. And I'll start from you and then go to CBSE also. Because you have NEP in the country where we're talking of a lot more choices and options that students can exercise. What are the subject offerings that IB has, and what are the choices or options of freedom that the student has in selecting what he or she wants to study?
So in terms of the IBDP and IBCP, there are a lot of choices for students to take from. Okay, there are 6 subject groups, and a student needs to take one subject from each subject group. A student wishing to choose, say, go in for medicine, has to choose 3 sciences, which is allowed. The myth is that IB will not allow them to take 3 sciences. A student who wants to take medicine can take 3 sciences. But we believe that if you want to be developed cognitively and you want to be a critical thinker, you need to be balanced with languages and the humanities. So it is a well-rounded education, so to say. So we encourage students to take one subject from each group. So at least 5 subject groups they need to touch. One can be an additional subject from one of the groups. But for sciences and for India, we have made that change. And we are also providing Indian percentage equivalent transcript that answers your previous question about the normalization.
Aditi ma'am, over to you. On CBSE, what are the choices, options that student has, and how free is the student to choose his or her subject groups?
So again, this is a problem of scale, because CBSE schools are larger. So as per CBSE, the child can take any 5 subjects. So they can take English, they can take biology, they can take business studies with history. But the problem, I think, comes, at least till last year, till the NEP came, about where will UGC slot that child? Will he be a humanities child because he's done history? Or will he be commerce because he's done business studies? Or will it be a science student because he's done biology? Because, there you choose your subjects according to a certain, domain.
Genre.
Now with the NTA coming in with the CUET, I think that will also change. So there are plenty of schools. We have these 3 streams, so to say. Now we're changing the name of stream to groups, because we are allowing children of humanities, for example, if they want to study biology or they want to do economics without maths. So all those accommodations are now being made possible. But we still find that parents still have a very traditional mindset. They still want to go with a subject group. So if it's a commerce student, they want accounts and business studies and economics and accountancy with English. Okay. We encourage them to take a 6 subject, like Mahesh said, more for a well-rounded personality. So they can take up German or French, or they can take physical education if they're good at that, or they can take fine arts if they're good at that. Something which I would say would be an outlet to just plain study.
And ma'am,
sorry, Mahesh, can I complete that?
Yeah, please.
Sorry,
yeah.
I'm interrupting. Very important. You put a right question. So in terms of the subject group, so what we are seeing is psychology and visual arts are 2 subjects which are chosen by a lot of Indian students in the last few years. I wanted to share that from the IB perspective. One, we in our course, in our program called IB Careers Program, students will do 2 mainstream IBDP courses, between 2 to 4 IBDP courses. They will do the IBCP core, which is self-professional skills and so on and so forth, solving community projects. Plus, they will deep dive into a career-related course, which is a 2-year timetable course. They would go for internships, industry internships, and so on and so forth. Okay, like sports management, sports psychology, all these things come in.
The importance of mathematics, up to what level is maths a necessity for the child to learn, and when does he or she say, okay, now I'm moving ahead beyond maths, kind of a thing? Mahesh, you can take it. You can start.
So if for IBDP, mathematics is the compulsory subject. Student can take it at a standard level, or a student can take it at a higher level. The school, based on the student's performance and his or her ability to cope up, would recommend either a standard level or a higher level. Okay. This IB doesn't treat standard level or higher level different. It's the teaching hours which are more for higher level.
So basically, you have 2 levels of mathematics, is what you're saying, and
yes.
At IBDP level, it is compulsory.
Yes.
Whereas in CBSE, they can leave it after class 8 in case they find that they cannot deal with maths. So there is something which is called dyscalculia. If a child has dyscalculia, they cannot deal with numbers. So if they can get that certificate from a
I get it. I get it.
Since Mahesh, you are also 90s. Since Mahesh is also a 90s child, for many of the state boards during that time, you had a chance that you could leave mathematics after class 8 and you could take the science stream or whatever, and you could drop mathematics. And then people like me who did that would struggle when we went into MBA. And so
I think it's important, in a certain sense, it's important to have some kind of an understanding of math. That is.
Sir, I have one question. As you said that in every answer, 7 to 8 keywords should be there. And Aditi ma'am told that no,
I
it
didn't
should
say
not.
that. I didn't say. Yeah, I asked the question, but I didn't say that. By the way, yeah,
Means you asked right.
yeah.
Sir, the same question I have also in our schools, as I'm in class 10, new class 10. So our teachers to telling that we have to mug up all the definitions without any concept and without any logic, especially in social science subjects. So there can't be any update on that. Means there's no visualization, there is animation, so that our concept clarity will be much better. We
Aditi
are
ma'am,
just
over to you.
opening the book and we are just mugging all these things, ratta maro ratta
But
maro,
that's
and
a wrong way of dealing with education. But anyway, Aditi ma'am will answer that. She is the best
I
person
will,
on this.
I will
It's a very tough question, like I said. And I always say this to teachers, when I'm addressing groups of teachers, I say, if you teach your children the way you were taught yesterday, you're not preparing them for tomorrow. It's as simple as that. Teachers have to unlearn. Maybe they were taught this way. They just open the book and mug it up. That's not the right way. And I didn't study that way, neither do I teach that way. In a very rough, I don't want to use the word construct your own knowledge, but children should be able to construct definitions, make meanings out of concepts, find their own meaning. Most likely, if you show something to a child, they will come to the right answer. But they should arrive at the answer, not be pushed towards it. So if there are schools that still do this, and I'm sure there are, I have absolutely no doubt. If Nikhil has faced such a teacher, I'm sure there are many such teachers.
Yeah,
If any of them is watching, or if any principal is watching, with folded hands, please don't do this. You are ruining the future of the country.
Yeah. And I think, Nikhil, I'll just take off from where Aditi ma'am has said. Increasingly, the score that you have is only a passport. For you to succeed, you need to learn, and that would not happen from the score. You entry might, like now, if you look at Q8, with Q8, your score is no longer relevant beyond a point. You just need to clear up to a point, and then you need to do something else. So increasingly, your scores are becoming irrelevant, and your learning is becoming more important if you see through your life journey. And from that perspective, never indulge in something which is a very short-term solution, because you'll give up the more important thing for the less important things. That's my perception about it. Mahesh, would you want to add to that?
I agree with what he said. Not about the marks you score, it's where you end up in the journey. The journey is very critical. And I would like to say that many schools are now adopting, I'm talking about non-IB schools as well. They're increasingly using storytelling and much more for teaching social sciences, be it your history, geography, and whatever.
Can I come in for one more thing?
Yeah, please, ma'am.
There's a portal called the Diksha portal that has become extremely attractive and very well used, especially during the pandemic, where a lot of content was put by teachers, podcasts, best practices, etc. You will find over there something called graphic novels. There are more than 100 graphic novels there right now, of which 17, I think, have been made at my school, where we have taken up random concepts and made a story around them. So all the laws of motion have been taught through a cricket match. There's a whole story about a cricket match. While teaching them, there's also a story about, values, for example, going out with family. The whole concept of winning a match or losing a match, big deal. About, shapes, 3D shapes that children first encounter in class 6 and 7. They find it very confounding. So telling that through vegetables, talking vegetables. So I wish all these resources which are available are seen by teachers and by educators, because it makes their journey so much easier.
I want to ask that suddenly I have written 3-4 books, and also I got national and international records. Through this journey, I got a huge support from a CBSE school. My question is that if I would be having IB board, or if I choose IB board in future, will I get the same support?
First of all, congratulations to you on your achievement.
Yeah.
Many of the schools which are there, right? That's what the school experience and the school you choose matters a lot. Forget the board. Okay. Yeah. It depends on which school you are in, and I'm very happy that your current school has been supporting you. And I can say very confidently that even if you move to an IB school or you continue with your current school, the school would love to support you. Okay, you have to be clear what do you want to do and how does that school support you, and what are you looking at, what kind of an experience you are looking at, whether that school provides you that kind of an experience.
Yeah.
Okay.
Aditi ma'am, this is for you. How does students of special needs, how does CBSE board deal with students of special needs? With special needs?
Well, there are a lot of accommodations now for the past almost a decade. Right from giving them subjects of their choice without forcing them to do certain subjects. Like I told you about dyscalculia, child can drop maths.
Yeah.
They're allowed to drop a third language in junior school and a second language in senior school. They are allowed to drop social science because for some reason, if they find it difficult to deal with facts, they can drop that as well. That's one accommodation with regard to content. Then while doing a board exam, they can be given extra time. They can be given a writer. So all these are helping children with special needs. And I think most good schools have these accommodations right from the start. So we allow them to do a shorter paper. They don't want to do a paper on a certain day. They're just not in the mood. We allow that. A lot of schools are now not forcing things which were forced maybe 2 decades ago. Nothing is forced now. So again, the whole idea of bringing joy in the classroom comes in, that you're not being pushed into something which you really don't want to do on that day or that moment.
One more question to you, Aditi ma'am, are the choice of subject combinations slightly more rigid in CBSE as compared to any other board?
Not anymore. Like I said, the NEP has clearly said that we are supposed to allow children to take any 5 subjects. Now I'm telling you what happens in a school like mine. I have 500 students in class 11. So if they start choosing whatever they want, I'll need maybe at least 100 sections, which I may not be able to have. So I will have to find that combination which suits the largest number. So it's possible that 10, 15 may be disappointed. We'll try still to give them the 6 subject, health, and give them that flexibility. But now instead of calling it humanities, science, and commerce, it will be called group 1, group 2, group 3 with the list of group subject which they want to do. That has been necessitated by the NEP.
Mahesh, this is for you. Because IB board also learns from all the experiences that it gathers from around the world in terms of creating the curriculum, the pedagogy, the learning methods and all. Do you think there is a unfair advantage for a student, or not unfair, there's an advantage for a student who wants to actually ultimately be a global citizen, that they go through the IB pathway and then deal with it?
Definitely, because our curriculum advocates global citizenship and elements around it like international mindedness, climate change and all. Okay, people mistake international mindedness to going overseas, which is not true. You can be a good global citizen even in your community, number one. Number two is there are university, what the data and research shows, because you are a very data person, Mahesh, is that universities see that IB students complete their higher education at a much higher rate. Okay, and they are able to cope up with the recurrent challenges of the university life better. So say, for example, how it helps is when somebody looking, say, at a University of British Columbia, there if a student, an IBDP student gets, or IBCP student, gets a score of 5 and above in language and literature, then that student need not take TOEFL or IELTS. Okay, so those are the kind of exemptions universities do provide. And with the cash is a very powerful thing. It's the community project, what you do. It enhances your college application when you go overseas. They look at the X factor rather than a score of 99 or a 92%.
In what ways does the CBSE board go beyond textbooks to ensure holistic wellness for the students?
So, like I said, with even before NEP, the good schools had projects which were led by students. So like if you have a TEDx happening, it's led by students. You pick out whatever theme you want. It could be gender, it could be women empowerment, it could be glass ceilings, anything, so it is linked to the curriculum without being in the textbook. Similarly for the MUN is completely what they're studying in the political science or in the legal studies. textbooks. But what the experience itself of those 3 days in a simulated MUN is way beyond the textbook. In the same way, most good schools, and this is all the CBSE does, we have science exhibitions at the regional level, then at the state level, and then at the national level, where the best projects are picked up and exhibited. Then you have exhibitions for social sciences, for languages. There are good schools which are now holding lit fests for their own children. You have ATL labs now. I'm sure you're aware that the Atal Tinkering Lab now exists in more than, I think, 5,000 schools of the country, where children are allowed to come and tinker. It's not a project, it's not an experiment from the textbook. It's something they picked up from the textbook, but they want to take it forward. Let it fail. Every failed experiment is celebrated with great joy. And again, the children are not bound by any time. They can sit there, much to the discomfort of the English teacher. But where were you? I was in the tinkering lab, and they're not supposed to get angry with them. So these are things which are happening in good CBSE schools and providing children opportunities way beyond their textbooks.
I think you use the word failure very, and that's a word that I want to come to, Aditi ma'am, because I failed many times over. And it's extremely important for a child to build back his or her confidence after what the society calls as a failure, but you still think that you excelled whatever you can, right? So Mahesh, in terms of IB, how does an IB curriculum deal with a student who is not really responding in terms of scoring the right marks?
So there are schools which give a different kind of experiences, and we are not looking at marks. That's why many people, when we say there is no pass or fail, there is no defined syllabus to a great extent up to primary, and that you could use curriculum and frameworks interchangeably to an extent, right? So those things matter, and we do not talk about fail or pass, so to say. Yes, you are awarded an IB diploma or you're not awarded an IB diploma. That's it. And students who get lesser scores are also able to find their way to the best of university. That's why IB aligns very well with those, because it's not mark centric, it's what you are bringing to the university, so to say. And we believe that the mission of IB is to make the world a better place through education. So failure and learning from failure is also in our risk taker, is an important IB learner profile attribute.
Aditi ma'am?
Well, I've always told the children that failure is an event and not a person, for starters. And there's so much to learn from a failure, not just for that person, but for everybody else. So the one thing that I've tried to do is not have so much competition. I just hate that word now, especially outside of the classroom. Don't compete for a race and for coming first in a dance or being the best singer. So we have more festivals, actually. So in the festival, everybody enjoys and you learn. Willy-nilly you learn when you're watching something. And when I call people, initially when I had organized the festival, it was an interesting one, but only 5 schools came. But probably we did something right, because the very next year 31 schools came. Last year we had almost 40, but it was online, so more people were able to join, because my mantra was this, that you're going to learn when you see something. When you perform yourself, you only know what you perform. You know only what you know. But when you hear others, when you see others dancing or singing or painting or doing theater, you will learn from that. So things like failure are something which we don't like to use, but yes, there is a mark that is given. The mark has been brought down significantly from 40% to 33%, almost 4 decades ago. So at least 40 everybody is able to get. I don't see too many failures. I mean, in that term, getting below a 40 as a score, that doesn't really happen. Schools also prepare them well. Parents are also stressed out, and children do push themselves in the last few days, which is again not something which the IB does, because they have a continuous evaluation, which is so much healthier for the child. That, they're not just preparing for that year-end exam and cracking that and then moving ahead.
So I think students should know that increasingly the new age universities are not just looking at the scores, but your overall profile of what you've learned. So if you take a good B school these days, ma'am, a CAT score weightage is only 35-40%. It only gets you into the interview process. Afterwards, someone else with a far lesser score would get in. Like I know the best of the B schools, which take students who have 70 percentile. but have a liberal arts profile, have worked in a social services organization, and have gone through that ground. So I think the understanding of the society, the culture, the demographics, and everything plays a lot more play than just being the highest scorer or the top scorer. It doesn't matter at all.
It's a myth that IB schools are very expensive. This is something which I said I will touch upon later.
Yeah, you must do that. You must do that. Expensive.
There are affordable IB schools. There are very expensive IB schools. Okay, they vary because IB doesn't impose or restrict or say instruct school that you should be charging a certain price. We don't do that. Number one. Number two is IB only mandates that all school teachers need to be trained. That is something we stress upon. And real estate costs differ from city to city. So sometimes, and you have RTE and RTI and a lot of other stuff which is also there. And fee hike restrictions are also there. So let us not forget that school owners and school management also have challenges. Okay. So we have very affordable schools, especially I've seen with the PYT program.
But Mahesh, can you also touch upon the scholarship that you have for bringing?
Yes, I was coming to that.
Yeah.
Many of the IB schools, existing IB schools, have generous scholarships or more than generous scholarships. Okay, I'm talking about both overseas and in India. And one last closing observation is both my sons have done IBTP and they are doing medicine and engineering.
Okay, fantastic. That sums up many things that we wanted to talk about it. Aditi ma'am?
Well, I'll go back to what I started with. There is no good board, bad board. It's purely a parent's choice and perspective. I think all good schools, I would rather prefer to call it good schools, should look at student learning and making students wholesome individuals. It's not about marks all the time. You're very right. Most good universities see what you are doing and not how many marks you've got. And I've seen it happening in our school as well. Sometimes the children with the not so great score have got into good universities in India and overseas. And the students who were very happy with the 98 and 99 did not get it. So not that I'm saying that marks are nothing, but marks are not the only thing. And I think this misconception that CBSE is all about marks also needs to go away. It's not only about marks, and a lot of new things are happening within CBSE. Unfortunately, again, like you said, because of the scale, it doesn't come out very openly.
Okay. So I'll ask some questions, ma'am, and I want a clear answer and this I'm going to ask both of you, because then I'll get things that are meant for the TRPs, so to say. If someone wants to study, and you can give an answer of CBSE, IB, or everything, so you can say that, but you need to say that, right? If someone wants to study for, going abroad, the student prefers to go abroad, is IB the better choice? Yes or no, Mahesh?
Definitely yes.
No.
No. So both you would say?
No, I'm saying no, but anybody, the child has to be ready to go abroad. There's so many other things that go with it.
No, in terms of the curriculum. In terms of the curriculum?
No, even the curriculum, we have so many kids who go out and they are topping the universities. They've gone to Ivy Leagues. There's nothing to say that they could not go or they could not do well.
Okay, Aditi ma'am, you're being the person you are. Right. The second question
CBSE.
is, I get it, right. If someone wants to crack a competitive examination landscape in India, between a state board and a CBSE, Aditi ma'am, what is your preference?
CBSE.
CBSE. Mahesh?
Or state boards of certain states. Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu.
Absolutely. Mahesh, I'm adding also to your question.
I will say that because I follow education very closely, I would say doesn't matter which board ultimately, because if that was the case, then you would have say 2.5 applicants and 9,000 seats, then everybody would have got, right? That is not the case. It's a function of time, speed, knowledge, and a lot of other factors.
So you still not answered.
Crack the competitive exam. So my statement is that all boards are good to crack the competitive exam.
Okay. Now, in terms of rigor, which board has greater rigor? And it's not pitting one against the other, but generally in terms of rigor.
In terms of the syllabus and subject content, the national boards are more rigorous. In terms of the learning, the teaching teaching and learning, the IB is very
Aditi ma'am?
And the
Somebody-
amount of activities they go through.
Someone who doesn't work hard finds everything rigorous. Somebody who is in the groove of it will not find it rigorous.
Ma'am.
Very diplomatic, right? She's very diplomatic.
Is it truth? Is it truth?
Okay. In terms of social equity, ma'am, and this I keep coming back because I work in that space a lot more. Because India is a very, very diverse country. How important is diversity in a classroom, and how does CBSE cater to it in that sense?
I think you're aware that all national board schools have to have RT students
exactly.
in their class.
But
And
only up to
every
class 8,
class-
isn't it?
Huh?
Only up to class 8.
Well, I do not have the heart to kick out a child after class 8. So my
Okay.
management has agreed to see them through till class 12.
Okay.
So, and most schools are doing it, by the way, except maybe some who have problems. So it's very important. And all these classes now over since 2009 till now, it's been a long, long time.
Yeah.
There has been adequate sensitization of all the classes to accept these children for who they are, what they are. It doesn't really matter where they come from. I find children are much kinder now than they were.
I completely am with you on that, ma'am. My son understands. Like, I'm so happy to say this. An RT EWS candidate is a topper in my son's school, and that girl. And my son studies in one of the best schools in Delhi. So, so I'm so happy when I look at that, because that girl comes for birthday
Absolutely.
parties and all, and it just warms your heart, saying, listen, this is what India should be like.
So the
Mahesh?
other thing which I've done, if I may share,
Yeah.
is that I've told parents not to have lavish parties in 5 stars.
Yeah.
Because
It is
not
only
right.
at home. It's only at home.
Have a party at home because then
Yeah.
everybody can afford that.
Absolutely.
And for these children, we have the party inside the classroom because they live in little shanties. They may not even be able to call 3 more children.
No, there is one in a PTA group. We actually have one rule that whenever a party happens, these children must be picked up from their home and dropped at their home. That's a rule.
No, but then if they were to enter a 5-star, they are like
No, that's
starstruck.
right. Yeah.
They don't know what to do.
So that's what I'm
And they
saying.
cannot do that.
Absolutely. With you. Mahesh, social equity and IB schools.
So just so happy to share with you that IB mandates inclusivity, access, and diversity. Okay, and we are doing more, not less. And this is globally, and it also catering to special needs. One, and this is seen even in India. Our schools are doing quite a lot when it comes to social equity. Okay, you will be astonished. Okay, and this is what I see when I go to Bangladesh with Aga Khan and what they are doing. When I go to schools in Malaysia, Indonesia, when I see schools in Africa and so on and so forth, a lot of work happening, and I would say that IB keeps on improving in this area on a continuous and regular basis.
Okay, Aditi ma'am, over to you. I hope you will pick up this one. For a STEM student, is CBSE better than IB?
Definitely.
Mahesh?
No, I would say IB.
Fair enough. For
You
liberal
got
arts
the wrong
students-
people, Mahesh. You got the wrong people.
But I'm enjoying this. For the first time, I'm not fighting with anyone. I'm enjoying a fight. So otherwise, I'm normally seen as a guy who keeps fighting with everyone around me.
No, we're nice people. Don't worry.
I've got a reputation. I've got a very bad reputation. Mahesh seems to know a bit about me. When he said data, I understand data. So, in terms of liberal arts universities, ma'am, is CBSE a good curriculum?
Yes, we have so much variety now available for a humanities student. And all our students who've gone abroad have not felt that they were at all out of place or at sea because of not getting so-called international education in school.
Okay.
Can I answer that?
Yeah, Mahesh. Yeah.
I would bat for the CBSE in terms of the perception battle, which I said it earlier as well. Okay. CBSE is not perceived as something which is encouraging liberal arts or humanities, but we have seen that for many years. Okay, when it comes to the IB, of course, we are very well perceived for humanities and liberal arts in India, in US and other places. Okay, but our STEM is great.
Okay. I think I've come to the end of it. It was wonderful having both of you. Honestly, it's been a very, very honest conversation. I would love to keep in touch with both of you for the simple reason that I think we need to keep guiding parents and students and also busting some myths that are there in their minds. All of us stand for learning and ensuring that students succeed at the end of it, and not just scores.
Yes.
And I think that's a very big step that we as educators need to keep pushing towards. And that agenda, I think, has been pushed 1 centimeter today in our conversation. So I'm very happy about that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks a
Thank you
lot.
so much. Thanks so much.
To both the Maheshes, great
Thanks.
learning. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Mahesh. Thanks so much. Bye.
And thanks to all the students and everyone. Please don't worry about the board. I would say this again and again. Focus on your own individual development and where you want to get.